for facilities or facility retrofit and expansion project, and ask Chad Hudson to come back up, purchasing manager, and present. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, tonight we're seeking commission direction to begin solicitation for a formal competitive sealed proposal process for a design professional for phases 1 and 2 of the facility seismic retrofit and expansion project. Last month, we came to the commission and presented a couple different potential contract delivery methods. And staff was directed by commission to come back at a later date, set a public hearing date. After kind of talking a little bit, the first step that we really need to do in the first place is to get a design professional on board. And that's kind of, doesn't really matter, I don't want to say 100%, but that's the first step. And that's not dependent on if we go the traditional design bid build, or if we go the construction manager, general contractor, CMGC. If we go that direction, we still have to get a design professional on board. That's the number 1 step. And so we just wanted to come to the commission and get direction and see what the comfort level was with proceeding forward with that RFP process. And then if the commission was comfortable to come back at a later date and present award the potential engineering architectural firm for this project.
Right. I might just supplement what Mr. Hudson said, is that although maybe we may kind of made the decision come kind of more formally to ask you the question, do you want us to proceed down, kind of on the road to a CMGC? Because as we do a formal RFP for a design professional, it will be in anticipation of going that direction. So I think as that process unfolds, the scoring process, the evaluation process, all that will be looking towards that kind of process, not just simply a design build. Although that decision, the commission will have to make that decision until you actually award a contract for a design professional. And even then, there are other off ramps through the whole process where you could essentially back out of it.
Yeah, and one of the things too is we don't do the CMGC every day. We're not experts in it. And kind of some of the ideas to build into the scope for the design professional would be to assist us through that process. I think it's very important, you know, they would be here for the public hearing if we decided to go that direction and kind of help us navigate through that. I think is important and critical. We did list kind of a general scope of what we would see that we put in the RFP, kind of from the beginning to the end of the project, with the off ramp in there at GMP. The commission would have the opportunity to move forward or to step back at that point when we have the GMP. Guaranteed maximum price.
Without documents, you can't, you have nothing to price. When they go out in the marketplace to accept someone to provide you with the CMGC stuff, they're gonna want to see, you know, what do you expect them to do and price it according to that. So I mean, this is the cart before the horse, so we gotta get drawings down. Bidding documents. And it may be that as they go through, they're so explicit, they may say, hard bid this, it's clean. CMGC works great when you don't have good, clean stuff, but this could be very clean. I mean, you got seismic that's going to take special engineer for that. You got expansion, going to take architectural firm. So I mean, I think we got to get the drawing stuff first.
So Ed, are you saying that we should not do a CMGC or?
I think, I mean, you know, it swings both ways. It depends on how busy stuff is. If things are slow now, we might get better pricing for hard dollar price, but there's a certain amount of risk to that too. And the risk relates to how well the drawing is. Are there holes in it, stuff like that. CMGC often work your way through some of that in advance. I mean, part of the CMGC process is this buildable?
Right. Yeah, to bring them on board to get some, you know, some input on this.
But until we get some drawings done on that, we can't. I don't think we can go anywhere.
So that's what this is about, right?
Right.
Those drawings.
To proceed forward, getting a design professional on board.
Get RFPs from architectural engineering firms or firms that were capable of meeting our
I
criteria.
mean, but as I go explain, the RFP process here would be, we would be RFPing and evaluating firms that would be capable of doing a GMGC. We would be, that's one of the evaluation criteria we'd be scoring them on, I think.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Okay, say that again.
So as we go into this process of solicitation, we'd be soliciting for a design professional with an anticipation that we'd be moving towards a GC process. We wouldn't necessarily have to do that, but we'd want a professional that would be capable of taking us down that path, if that's what the commission.
So in the
says.
document, you would put language in there that you want to know their experience in managing these processes and give
Right.
us successes. And, okay, yeah, I mean,
So Sam, are you thinking the person we hire now might end up being the CMGC?
No, we
Okay,
will definitely
good,
not be.
good,
a
okay,
CGC.
we're hiring a
Right.
design professional.
Because we have to go through, this process actually doesn't require we do a hearing before we hire a design professional. But before we would actually hire a GMGC contractor, we would have to public hearing to allow us to do that alternative bidding process before we even
Okay.
solicited
Right.
for the GMGC. So this is gonna come back to you multiple times before you get to, I mean, before you ever get to a process where you're actually hiring a GMGC to actually build the project, if that's what you
In
decide.
the last 5 years, I've been to seminars that are all about promoting CMGC, and I've also been to ones for hard dollar pricing.
Mhm.
And it starts with having a really strong design professional that hasn't got a bunch of holes in the drawing. That end up putting us,
The risk.
you know, and I mean.
Yep.
They walk away and we start with, 25 change orders or something, so. And this is such the seismic thing, very specialized and. So, yeah.
I would like to mention that if we do go down this path, it will eliminate a progressive design build as a potential alternative contracting method. Just because in that you're hiring a team, which includes the design professional and the contractor. And so if we go like we're recommending or asking for tonight, that would be eliminated.
I'd say currently the most economical way of doing it is to proceed with getting a design firm on board. Get the drawings put together to where they're biddable, and then if we want to go out. And again, your criteria is going to be, they have to have that kind of experience. Then they're going to say, based on the current economic conditions, we think this might be, and one of the ways to do it is you pre-qualify people to bid the project. And that lets you make sure because we can, when this building was built, we had to go out and bid twice because the first time we had a lot of problems. We had to disqualify the bids, and so I think the drawings, if they're done well, and this firm can advise us, and that's our decision point at that point. Do we go CMGC or do our dollar, right?
I feel like this is in line with how we ended our discussion last
Okay.
time, so I feel like if this is the next step, we should move ahead. Please.
Okay, so what
Yes.
we're looking for is a motion by the commission to direct staff to solicit a formal competitive seal process. A design professional for construction by alternative contracting method of water lights, seismic retrofit and expansion project phases 0.5 and also 1. And receive and evaluate proposals, bring a staff recommendation of award back to the commission for decision whether to award a contract for professional design services in support of proceeding with a construction manager, general contractor, alternative contracting method.
I'm sorry, I thought the discussion was that we wouldn't commit to CMGC right now, but we would just make sure that the person was qualified too, if we wanted to do that. And it sounds like what you read is we're telling them to bid it to go forward with a CMGC.
So what we're gonna do, thank you for the question. What I'm suggesting is, what this is proposing is that we move forward into a solicitation process. So solicit for a design professional that's fully capable of moving us towards a CMGC process, or into a CMGC. you're gonna see that award or that solicitation come back to you for a decision. So we won't award, this won't get awarded by staff. This
No, I
award-
understand that, but I mean, if you solicit it
Right.
wrong, we're just, the only bids we'll get will be what they would charge us to do the CMGC, right?
Well, we'll be soliciting for a CMGC proposal. Now, we're not going to go into the, maybe to Commissioner Gormley's point, the CMGC process and that solicitation foresees that you don't proceed even into, into your final design phase before you actually hired a CMG contractor. So
Right.
you're going to see this come back to you before design plans are drawn, before, because at that point, if you decide, look, we just want to do just a standard, just a design build, then at that point, you could decide, okay, we don't want to go into a CMGC. We just want to hire a design professional to finish out the plans, give us, 90%, 100% drawings, and then we'll bid it out separately. But I mean, I think what staff is sort of suggesting, I know I'm speaking for staff, is that there's a value to allowing sort of the CMGC process to work out at least to a certain point, to allow the commission to see, okay, what is the advantage of doing it this way?
And Sam, we're calling out that we're looking for a design firm that has expertise in this area, so that when we come to make the decision, we've hired the right design firm to move forward, if that's right. So it's about identifying a skill set through this RFP process that we may or may not need, depending on what we decide in future meetings. But we need it now because it will determine our ability to go this direction. If we don't have that skill set built into the design firm, we've eliminated that option.
Right, and so you won't spend any money except staff time in the RFP process. Bringing you back an option for a design professional that's capable of going forward with to support our further effort in the CMGC. So
I must have misunderstood what you said, because it sounded as if we are telling the people who are bidding that we want them to bid to do the CMGC process.
I think that's correct, but you don't have to, if you're gonna, I think that is correct, and they'll come back with a proposal to do that. And at that point, the commission decides, we don't want to do that. This is, we can.
But we decide, I thought Ed was talking about you decide after you had your plans drawn.
My suggestion is that you pre-qualify somebody that's got this kind of background. Well, you need to hire a design professional to basically get the box figured out. You can't have any contractors bidding the work until the process, what we as the customer are expecting to be constructed. The secondary part of that is, if you want to go to CMGC, you should have a design professional that is experienced in working with and managing that. But if we're going to have 100% drawings, then what we're going to go to the CMGC person is let them bid it out. They take the top 3 bidders, and then they sit down with us and we go through those experiences and stuff like that. The other way is the hard dollar stuff. We don't see any of that. It's just, we issue a contract and it's up to that outfit to perform.
Do you want to answer the 100% drawing thing, or do you want me to?
Well, yeah, so the CMGC, the idea that we're moving forward with the CMGC is that if the commission was comfortable with it and approved the alternative contracting method, that the CMGC or the CM, the construction manager would be brought on early. They'd be brought on early in the design phase to offer input for constructability. It's upfront early, as opposed to having 100% drawing and then bringing it on the CMGC.
So the theory behind CMGC is you don't get to 100% drawing.
I understand. I'm telling you, the economy right now is maybe better off with hard dollar bids. I mean, there's not a multitude of work out there to bid. School districts are not passing bond measures, and there's not a lot of public works projects in that. And anyway, it's,
But I thought I heard that our first step is to get a designer on board that has experience doing the CMGC.
Right, and that's why we'd solicit with that in mind, so we would
Right.
qualify, we would bring people in that are qualified to do that.
But then what do we, I mean, so if we decide not to do the CMGC,
Mhm.
and I don't know whether we would or not. What have we paid for this design professional for by telling them that we're going to do a CMGC?
We haven't paid them anything until we've actually awarded a contract, and so that,
Okay, no, I know, but if, so we pick somebody, we award the contract. And we tell them we want them to do a CMGC design. If we then get to a point where we decide not to do it. How much more have we paid this person for stuff we don't need?
I don't necessarily know the answer to that question. I've not gone through this process before. It's fun, it's a, as I understand it, the process would look like you would hire a design professional that would support you in going into the hearings process to qualify yourself or to allow you to award to a GMC or CM contractor. At that point, if you decided if you hire the design professional, you move into that process. You get through the hearings process, and then you would solicit for a CM, for a contract manager. The design phase wouldn't even move forward until you actually get that contract manager in place. You would hire them, theoretically you'd hire them. And then in that phase one, before you ever got to a guaranteed maximum price, you'd be in the design phase. And in that design phase, you've got both a design professional and the potential contractor on board there. And in theory, the CMGC is better because you've got a designer working with the actual contractor to do the design. So you move forward, and then after that design is complete, the contractor then give you his guaranteed maximum price. And at that point, you have to decide, okay, am I going to award to that? Am I going to award to the contract, the GMGC,
Yeah.
CMGC?
Or,
So
no, okay, so your thought is that we would commit to that process now with the off-ramp, which all CMGCs have off-ramps like that, right?
well, and the first off ramp you'd have is you wouldn't have to hire the design professional at all if we brought back to you a proposal with a recommendation award for a design professional to head down this road to CMGC, and you decided at that point we don't want to do that.
So,
And we haven't spent any money at that point. We just had a solicitation. We spent staff time. But we've got proposals in hand. We scored. We're bringing back to our potential award. And you could decide not to award.
And we would do that because it looked like it wasn't gonna work or it was gonna cost too much to do it that way, right?
Well, we'd have a proposal from a design firm that would with a cost.
Right.
With a cost proposal. So yeah, the design professional would have given us a price.
so can I just ask,
Sure.
I mean, a design professional isn't, I mean, I would think a design firm has professionals that work in lots of different structures, right? And that aren't we just asking to have a designer that has a background where they've worked in the CM process before, but if we didn't go that way, they couldn't still be our designer in a different process. You know what I'm saying? It's like, can you just get a designer that works with various processes, but the designer is the designer and you keep them no matter what? Or is that, are those two things like tied
We
together?
could, if I'm understanding your question.
I understand it very well.
After getting through to whatever point we get, if we decide, and I think this would naturally get to the process where we have awarded to both a design professional and also to a GMGC, but we got to the point of the guaranteed maximum price, and the commission decided at that point the guaranteed maximum price was too high and we want to bid it out. We just want to bid it out to put it on the street. We could do that because that's how those contracts are operated. They operate. So you
You're
bring
gonna pay your design professional more money to be doing that though. Because you started them out on the CMGC route.
Mhm.
Now you're gonna ask them to manage the bidding process.
I don't understand how the route affects the design, like. Isn't the design separate from the mechanism you use to execute it?
Yeah,
or
so I think
no?
the design is the design. I mean, at the end of the day, we're gonna hire a design professional to design the project. That remains consistent. I think we're kind of beating around the bush a little bit. There's extras in this, the scope of services. That if we proceed kind of the way we're going right now, there's extra steps in there that is gonna cost money. And trying to navigate through that process where we can bring a contract or maybe options to the commission of we have a price for proceeding with a traditional design bid build scenario. And then we have an option B for going to CMGC. I mean, it would take a little bit of work within the scope of work and you'd have to, it's a little bit trickier, a little bit. I'm just kind of, I'm trying to vet it out loud a little bit, but I think that's kind of what this.
Could I just do a timeout for the moment? Let's go back to Soderstrom. Did you ask Soderstrom what they recommended? And what did they recommend?
CMGC.
And when did they recommend that to you?
After they're done with their,
And how long ago was that?
6-8 months.
A year ago, 10 months ago?
No, it was probably 4 to 6 months ago.
And why did they recommend that?
They said, especially in the seismic retrofit, there's a lot of variables or unknowns. Going the traditional design bid build route lends itself to a lot of potential change orders. And to have a CMGC or a CM up early in the phase in the project during design phase can help, I'm not saying eliminate, but can help to reduce some of those change orders.
Hey, the other thing I've heard voiced, I'm not sure exactly how this talks in this, but I've also heard voiced, we typically in our construction, we do design build. In our pipe projects or our public work projects, we do design build, but it's because it's in our area of expertise. We know what we're doing, putting pipe in the ground, putting stuff in the ground to move
You
water.
always have a consulting engineer that lays these projects out.
Okay, but
That is the design portion of it.
I'm just
They
saying.
then put
I'm
it
just
out on the
repeating what I've
street to
heard.
bid. I mean, design build
Yeah,
is that you hire a contractor to design it and build it.
right.
You did that with the gas station setup.
Just, it was an
That's really
alternative.
probably the only pure design build project we've ever done. The dam and everything, we had CH2M Hill running the show the whole way, or Jacobs Engineering, whatever they call them. These pipeline projects, we've got the engineering firms, Carrillo and those different guys that have set those out for us to get bids on installation. So what they're saying is, there's all kinds of problems with this, and you get the guy on board, so what they're telling you, you're gonna pay for it one way or the other. In the end.
Yeah.
And I'd like to think we would hire a design. This building is not a mystery. We have the drawings and everything on how this was built. This was built in the 80s.
Mhm.
We have to get a seismic engineer that really understands the current codes and all that we're dealing with there. So if we're building a box out here, the architect can handle it just great. But we've got some specialty things that need to be here to make this building. And so I'd like to think they should be able to design this well enough that we could bid the thing, because it's not like some masonry building downtown that we have no records of anywhere. We have complete drawings here on this building that a seismic engineer could look at and say, well, today we would do such and such. We got to do all this bracing in here and stuff. So,
We already have that. We have.
but yeah, but I think a lot of CMGC stuff, it's an easy way for the architect not to have to, it makes it a working process. They kind of work on together. It's like we've opened our checkbook to them. And once we start, I don't care, they set the budget. What if they're wrong with the budget? We can leave all over it. No, we're going to keep, we'll keep pouring the money in. So I don't know. I just, the economy's different now, and I should shut up.
Well, the other option
We can bid it to, or we can get proposals with two options.
Mhm.
We could do the traditional design, and then bill, and then we could get the CMGC so we can compare the cost.
Commissioner Christensen?
But well, I just was wondering, Chad, I remember in a previous conversation, you had mentioned the value of having both the construction manager and the architect working not on the same team, but collaborating and sort of the push-pull of that process. And I think that was what was compelling for me when you originally brought this before the commission, is that you would have that construction manager contractor in the conversation, but they were working collaboratively, but not necessarily on the same team. Is that the perspective that you have in this process? That they're
Yes,
working
towards-
kind of parallel to each other as opposed to, one's beholding to the other.
Correct, yes, if we proceed with the CMGC.
Yeah, and so that's what I appreciated about the process. I'm working on another project that's similar. Had we done that, I think it would have been helpful to have that sort of collaborative back and forth between the two. So that's what I appreciate here. And I think we because this is a specialized expertise in seismic, and while we may have good drawings, I do think that this feels, and I appreciate staff's recommendation to think differently about this project because of the expertise that it takes. So I am supportive of moving forward in a design firm that has expertise in this area. And then at the point where the commission can make a decision of going one way or the other, I wonder if the proposal can be crafted in a way that gives comfort to the commission that we're looking at sort of both ways of approaching the project. I don't know if that's possible, that the submissions could have, this is what the CMGC looks like, and this is what a bid process would look like with the particular firm.
And another, sorry.
Go ahead.
Another way we could approach it too is just move forward with the design firm, just go in as a traditional design bid build. We're looking for an engineer to design the retrofit and the upgrades. And we can build into the original RFP that we send out to them qualifications based on their experiences with the CMGC. And if we go through the process and it comes up through, that they are recommending it strongly that we go with the CMGC direction, that we have a contract amendment to that original engineering agreement that the commission would approve, and we come back with basically a contract amendment that would have the different steps.
It's pretty clear to me that Ed has the most experience with this, but that we really as a group don't have a good handle on it. And so I really like John's idea of bidding it two ways and telling we want a submission as to what they would charge to do it as a CMGC activity and what they would charge as a design build, and then we would have an idea from them what the cost would be. Because I'm concerned that if you went down the CMGC route and then decided that you wanted to you didn't like the maximum bid from the contractor, you will have already paid that contractor a bunch of money. And more than you would have paid just to have it designed. And so that's where you've lost money by doing this. But it could be, like you said, Jody, that the design professionals will all say, you really should do it this way, but let's find out in the bidding process rather than we start down the wrong way, which is what I thought we were talking about in the beginning.
And I would just say, I would think we would want a designer in as well, right? Like in the process, somebody that is thinking beyond just the engineering, but the social engineering of how the facility works, etc. And would that be encapsulated in this?
That would be the architect and his
Well, it could be the
expertise in space
architect.
planning. The
can-
engineer generally is a structural engineer that specializes in seismic, has credentials to do that. So it's like we remember how we talked about modern bathrooms and stuff, and we go to all the unisex stuff and that. I mean, that kind of creative stuff comes from the planners within the architectural firms and.
Right, well, it
like
can't be an
so-
architect, but it could be a separate designer. I mean, there are designers.
Yeah, no, I know,
just
exactly. But I
out on
mean,
their own.
the issue comes down to the size of this building and code requirements. They're gonna have a stamp. And designers, this is too big a building for, like me. I don't have a license to design certain things relative to this. I can design a lot of stuff and
Right.
stamp it.
But we don't just want to bring the building up to code, right? We also want to
we
improve
this
it
this
along the
vision that
way.
we've all shared, yes.
Yeah,
So
right.
let me just interrupt here for a minute. There's a bunch of work at David Douglas High School. Bidding, and it's CMGC. The contractor doing the work is the same one that did the big expansion of the high school and everything. Part of why they're doing CMGC is timelines and getting critical work done in certain windows unique to schools. The bond measure was put together, the school district, they went out for solicitations and on a CMGC, and it ended up being about what markup percentages are going to be used, stuff like that. And then there was a lot of recovery work because of so many unknowns that had to be done. And again, you had this short window, and the CMGC was the quickest way to do that. We don't necessarily have those kind of pressures. And I'm just thinking, watching the economy and stuff, that I'm watching other seismic projects I know about, and they're all being bid hard. This thing of David Douglas is not seismic as much as it's retrofitting an old 50 school. So
Commissioner Christensen, you'd started to say something earlier.
And it was profound. I don't remember what I was gonna say.
Well, I'll say, I've heard staff here say that we do have timing issues. We have to we have to be operational during all phases of construction. We're going to be operating in this building and in a new building. We'll have to transition to a new building when this building gets retrofitted, because this building will have to be retrofitted. So I'm not hearing staff speak up, but.
No, yeah,
well, but
yeah.
Sam,
But I've
the
heard that,
bond measure that
right?
passed and the money came, we've got the cash sitting. We can
Right.
totally schedule everything we want.
No, I don't.
They didn't have the luxury. They had classes gonna open up. They got to get this done.
Sure, I'm just
Ready.
saying, I've heard staff describe that this will be quite a juggling act.
No, it will
to have-
be, but
to have
that's
work be
the chaos of
done.
construction.
So that is in fact, I think, one of the factors that argues in favor of the GMGC.
So, if you don't mind, could I put you on the spot a little bit, Chair Tate? I feel like there's kind of three different things on the table right now. And I'm just curious where you are.
I feel like maybe we already came to the thought that if we put 2 solicitations out, that would leave us in a position to continue this conversation and maybe have some more insights between now and then. I don't know. That's where I'm at, I guess.
So put a solicitation out with basically option A and option B is kind of what I'm hearing. And then to go negotiate prices with the selected engineer and architectural firm and have a comparison to present to the commission.
And let that company we select come and convince us that the CMGC is the route to go, because there's so many holes here we can't pinpoint,
Well, they may have things that we don't know.
Yeah. So I mean, part of it's starting to tear some wall, that we need to tear this room apart before we really can know about how much steel is needed.
I'm just
So, I
trying
mean,
to find
That's where this.
a route that
comes in.
get us moving forward. Do you have another idea other than that?
I don't have another suggestion.
My only other suggestion would be to move forward with just getting a design firm on board. And then coming back to the commission with potential contract amendment if we decided to go with the CMGC.
Right now, before the board, let the board talk to them,
I mean, that would be another option as well, but
And I think what I was trying to ask earlier is like, can you hire a design firm just to do the design regardless
Yeah.
of what method. Is it possible that they would say, we can't, when you tell them we decide to go the CMGC route, they say, oh, we don't do
Yeah,
that? Like,
I think in the original RFP, that would be a scoring category. We would make sure that we built that in there, that they do have experience with CMGC,
mhm.
regardless of what direction we go.
Comes back to Joe's
Well,
point.
there are
Yeah.
third parties that specialize in managing these projects. There's a cost layer all of a sudden that we really haven't put into it. And I mean, that is, when you go that route, you've gotta hire somebody that looks out for us, making sure the architect's doing their work and making sure the contractor's doing theirs, and can't expect staff. So there are companies that specialize in doing that. And that's where if we have the drawings done, we can say, you know what, we're gonna put this out in the street, and maybe we have to hire a project manager that manages for us. We've done that before. So, I
Would you
mean,
be comfortable? Would you be comfortable getting two then?
Yeah.
yeah, I
Making
mean,
it two
let's
different
get
ways?
the
Are
option
you
on
comfortable?
it.
You brought that up earlier.
Well,
Can we just make a
What-
decision to move forward like that?
Well, I have one question before we go that way. What are the drawbacks of doing that?
I think it makes it a little muckier through the process, like the original RFP process to have two options. I guess it wouldn't necessarily, but you're gonna be negotiating two different contracts.
So,
It's time, I guess.
yeah, it feels like we're taking, we're just making it messy. If I saw that solicitation, I would say like, they don't know what they want. Could we not say, in the solicitation that we want, the firm's recommendation on the difference between a CMGC process and and recommend that? I mean, could that not be part of the, or does that feel
And
messy?
what about just two completely can you just solicit twice in two different ways? And so people who don't want to do the CMGC wouldn't put in a solicitation and they'd, you know what I mean? It's like, could it just be two completely separate paths that you go on at the same time? Or is it better to do what Jody's recommending
Well, the other
or
thing
suggesting?
is, when do we don't need to bring the CMGC on from day one.
Right.
So is it at 30% we bring them on? Because we need to have something for them to even look at before they even get to that point.
well, the interesting thing about that is you will have decided on hiring somebody and you will have agreed on a design fee. In the course of those conversations, he can say, this project, we've discovered a bunch of problems. We think there should be onboarding because we have got to have a bunch of structural work done to really get pricing.
Yeah.
And that's when you do it.
And you don't do it when you're 60 or 70%. Now you do
It's too
it,
late.
yeah, you do it at 30% probably, so you have kind of a basis for when to look.
And then you do
okay.
price checking at 50 and 75% and
So you
then
do
the CMP,
design.
yeah, then the GMP. Yeah.
So why doesn't Jody's method work that we would? Part of the RFP is they're capable of doing either way. And they will advise us on which way we should do it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think it's very valid.
I think
Because
that's
don't
a,
think we need to hire, we don't need to get the contractor on board from day
You
one.
don't.
yeah, so I think that's a great recommendation. I think it addresses your concerns, Commissioner. I think it addresses all the concerns that were raised and doesn't muck up the process as what's the technical term, and so General Counsel, if you would do us a great favor of
Yeah,
helping reading the action.
Sam, count to 10, walk out in the lobby to come back. Okay.
You know, actually, so I think we're just, I read you a very formal motion. I'm not sure we need that formal motion. I think we just seek direction from the
General
commission,
direction.
Yes.
to go ahead to solicit for, a design professional capable of doing both, CMGC work and traditional design build work.
Thank you so much.
Bring that back to the commission for.
Yeah, including them making a recommendation.
With the record.
Maybe you need more. I think we'll have a better chance of a better project that way.
All right,
Thank you,
general
Jody.
direction given. Thank you, Commissioner Christensen.
Are you looking for a motion?
we're just giving general direction. We're not doing a motion.
Ah, okay.
So direction given.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, sir. Okay,
And Chad.
that was the long. Okay. And staying with us now, we'll move into request for special procurement for distribution transformers.
Yes, and we're seeking commission adoption of resolution to approve a specific special procurement for the purchase of distribution transformers for calendar year 2025. The last two calendar years, the commission has approved the special procurement with General Pacific for transformer production slots, basically is what we're looking for. The environment with all transformers, I was gonna say distribution, but they're all over the board, all types, is not good still. The lead times are anywhere from 1 to 3 years. The prices with all manufacturers are more than double what they were in 2019. And some manufacturers or distributors aren't even bidding, just because of the backlog. And so by going this direction, it solidifies supply of distribution transformers for the next calendar year. We've found this to be extremely beneficial to McMinnville Water and Light. And recommend that we had moved forward again this year with a production slot from General Pacific.
Yeah, Mr. Justice, will you read the motion?
Yeah, this is resolution number 2024-7, a resolution of the city of McMinnville acting by and through its Water and Light Commission approving a contract specific special procurement for electric distribution transformers.
Have a motion?
So second,
I have a motion from Commissioner Gormley, a second from Commissioner Tankersley. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed say nay.
thank you, Chad.
Thank you.
And the
Hold
motion
the
passes.
commission, please.
Oh, it's a resolution.
Yeah.
You got me.
Okay, Mayor Drapkin,
Aye.
Commissioner Tate,
Aye.
Commissioner Tankersley,
Aye.
Commissioner Gormley,
Aye.
Commissioner Christensen.
Aye.
Thank you so much.
Thank
And
you.
resolution is adopted unanimously.
Mayor Remy, could I interrupt?
Yes.
This might be something to Jody. Our funding of the water line project to open up the west side, is that still looking good? And
Yeah, do we want to come back to that during
the reason I
commissioner
ask that,
comment?
let's say that this all happens, bam, bam, bam. Does this transformer order give us enough transformers if we have a bunch of lots opening up there right away? I mean, would we be holding up construction because we didn't get enough transformers or something?
I don't believe so, because there's 290
lots.
lots, and they're not gonna all happen
Right.
Okay.
Within
just-
5 years.
Yeah.
They have to happen within
Right.
5 years.
Okay, just want to make sure that we
And-
had all the bases covered. Thank you.
Yeah. More soon.
most.
That. Okay, Mr. Dietz, resolution, regarding Lafayette water purchases.
Yes, so at the commission meeting last month, the commission directed staff to go to Lafayette with an amendment number 2 to the agreement with Lafayette. Lafayette took that to their council. They had no changes to that agreement, and I believe, have we received something back? So they authorized their mayor to sign that amendment, and we have received that back, so.
Right.
Looks like they have no changes to that amendment, so I
Right.
believe Sam has a resolution.
Right, thank you.
Right, this is resolution number 2024-8, a resolution authorizing approving amendment number 2 to the water purchase agreement between the city of McMinnville Water and Light Commission and the city of Lafayette Municipal Corporation, State of Oregon, 2024-8.
Thank you. Entertain a motion.
I'll move.
I have a motion from.
Oh, no, it's a resolution.
Right,
Oh, wait, I don't know.
so the motion.
Second.
Yeah, thank you. I have a motion from Commissioner Christensen, a second from Commissioner Gormley, and I would ask the clerk to poll the commission.
Yes, Mayor Drapkin,
Aye.
Commissioner Tate,
Aye.
Commissioner Tankersley,
Aye.
Commissioner Gormley,
Aye.
Commissioner Christensen.
Aye.
And the resolution is adopted unanimously. Thank you so much.
I'd like to thank staff too for this got done and it got done efficiently and in a way that helped the relationship. So thank you.
I might add, we had a regional water meeting today and nobody was complaining from Lafayette, so that was good. So.
All right, Mr. Dunmeyer, if you would please join us regarding the FEMA contract.
Commissioners. Yeah, so we have been working on a FEMA claim for quite some time. February of 2021, we experienced about $290,000 of damage to our electric system from an ice storm. And went through the process with FEMA. They were very helpful, but it was a slow process. We were reimbursed for 75% of that 290,000 in November of last year. And because there was a HR 2471 that was signed into law by President Biden that enabled us at that time to be able to be eligible for a 90% reimbursement rather than the normal 75. And so the extra 15% is what we have forms in the packet for signature that would allow us to receive that additional 15% from the State Office of Emergency Management for reimbursement. And so the resolution that's included would authorize the mayor and the clerk to sign those for that reimbursement.
Excellent. Would you read the motion, please?
This is resolution number 2024-9, resolution authorizing approving completion and certification reports for infrastructure contract 4599DR0 or OR between the state of Oregon acted by and through the Oregon Military Department Office of Emergency Management and the city of McMinnville Municipal Corporation of the state of Oregon acting by and through its Water Light Commission is 2024-9.
Thank you. Entertain a motion. So moved. The motion's approved.
Second.
Chair Tate, and a second from Commissioner Tankersley, and I'd ask the clerk to poll the commission.
Yes, Mayor Dropkin,
Aye.
Commissioner Tate,
Aye.
Commissioner Tankersley,
Aye.
Commissioner Gormley,
Aye.
Commissioner Christensen.
Aye.
Yes. Commissioner
In
Dunn.
looking at our financial statements and stuff, are you treating this as a reimbursement or is this income or how are you going to post this?
It is, it's other income that
It's
we
other
received.
income, okay.
Yeah, and we actually posted the income, I think it was in 22, after the award was granted from
Okay.
from FEMA. So then it's just been a receivable since, so.
Okay, right, and the resolution is adopted unanimously. Will you go into the not a budget document?
So, yeah, I'm gonna present our draft budget, still in draft form, but all assembled, for the commission to look it over. And as part of that this year, we did look at some cuts, and one of the things that we inquired about was our insurance deductibles, and we always receive really great help from Hagan Hamilton. Ryan Hartzell has been super to work with, and he actually inquired with City County Insurance, and they came back with some options, and so he did some work on that and presented that to John and myself. And those looked favorable. We have included the result, the lowering of the premium as part of the budget. But obviously that's still a decision that the commission would need to make. And so, and that would happen next month when we do our insurance renewal, but we wanted to, because this was in the budget now as a reduction, we felt it would be good. And Ryan was willing to come and present to the commission. So he'll present first, and then I'll do the budget presentation for the commission. So.
And thank you for your patience with us this evening.
Oh, no, I you always learn a lot as a resident, getting to sit here and watch everybody work through some really good decisions, and yeah, I appreciate the thoroughness and looking at that. So, yeah, thank you for having me in. So part of the strategy this year and looking at the insurance is the industry is just really struggling from a property standpoint with capacity. If you look at insurance over 75 years, we're tracking, trends with losses. 6 of the worst losses have happened in the last 10 years in the history of the United States. 2023 was an absolutely terrible year. 22 was awful. We all know what happened in 2020 in the Northwest. So property is really becoming very complicated, lack of capacity, getting very expensive. So in light of that, City and Water Lights had a deductible on their property at $25,000 for quite some time. And speaking with Mark and John, what were the options to look at, increasing that? So last year we looked at an auto physical damage deductible. We beefed that up a little bit. We thought perhaps looking at that again this year to take more risk on, retain more risk for water and light. The property was probably the big one, go from 25 to 50. Is this the?
I think Trina has that, if you
Okay.
scroll up, Trina.
Yeah, scroll up a little bit. We were kind of prepared in looking at knowing this was coming, potentially looking at great. That's a
This would advance and go
That goes
backwards,
back.
and this is a pointer if you wanna. That work?
I can go either way you want to do it here.
I go back just to the first chart there, just for the cost works.
You want the very first one? you
Yeah.
showed?
Yeah, let's go back to the first with the premiums on there, if you wouldn't mind that. Yeah, if you just want to scroll down. So, the way we wanted to look at this, our current deductible, what's the current premium we're paying on that? What's the renewal premium look like we knew the, increases would happen in the property markets and just leaving the deductible alone. And then what's the renewal look like potentially by just having water and light retain 50,000 more risk. So this is a per occurrence deductible, meaning that if we have a loss, on March 1st, it's a $50,000 property deductible. If you have a loss 15 days later, it's also another deductible. That is a different kind of deductible than what we would see and looking at other lines of insurance too. So we looked first at the property and the auto, kind of made sense on that. Part 2 of this, working with John and Mark, was what about a liability deductible, which we hadn't had. So going general liability and auto liability. So that's, we get a call from a customer and they are alleging a water line is broken or, we got food spoilage or we cause bodily injury or property damage allegedly to someone else or someone else's property. And then part 2 of that is auto liability, our vehicles damage someone or cause property damage. So what's a $25,000 deductible look on that? So current premium with no deductible and then the $25,000 aggregate. Arriving at the fact, so maybe look at the next chart here. How historically has this looked to take on this kind of savings, and does this make sense with frequency, severity, and that kind of thing? So if we look at this, this is how the years would come out using a liability deductible. So what is the savings versus what was, actual claims? And you can look at the number was pretty overwhelming that, hey, a deductible kind of makes sense with historically how claims have performed. Property was even more significant. So we have a $25,000 property deductible. We moved to 50. What do claims look like for property over the last, few years? Well, we've had one property loss for $172. So I think if capacities there, taking on a larger deductible, get to 50,000, probably is, probably a pretty good idea. Offsets, some charge. I do want to say going through this, and I think this is important in talking with John and Mark, and thinking about the customer service aspect of claims. With deductibles, there are some programs where you adjust your own claim, and there are programs where you get first dollar adjustment. I think what's really important, we want to make sure that we're protecting, staff where we're sending a professional adjuster out to handle the claim at the first dollar. So as soon as we get the report, there's damage somewhere, we're getting that CIS adjuster to go out, take care of the customer, go gather the facts, do the due diligence and settle the claim. That would stay the same. the billing on that, then once the claim is, determined and settled, then an invoice comes back to, square up on the deductible. An aggregate deductible and a property deductible are two different things per incident, per occurrence. So the aggregate deductible on the liability and for general liability and auto bills. So if we have a broken pipe and somebody's saying it was $1,200, we pay the first $1,200, we get one a week later, then accumulates and it starts eating into that $25,000 deductible. And so that seems to be a good fit for that side of things, and we get that first dollar adjustment. So there is a little more risk of that property because that is a per occurrence, deductible. So each one of those is 50. So just a little bit of difference. I think it's important to understand the two on that. But I think, obviously from the charts, and I don't know if anybody else had any, were the charts included in the packets, or this is the first time everybody's seeing that?
No, it wouldn't.
Okay, so any questions from the charts that we looked at just to justify how we kind of arrived at looking at history and how to determine deductible amount?
Yeah, Ryan, just quickly, on the liability, I didn't, maybe I'm not seeing it, but is there a number that we would have saved or would have paid more?
There it is, right here. So if we would have had a liability deductible in place,
Use this guy, this.
Oh,
right
okay.
there.
Yeah.
Pointing out.
if you see in the far corner where it says savings, the green means you're coming out ahead. The deductible in those
Okay,
years.
I see it, thanks. I thought the
Yeah.
last charts were
Okay.
something different.
So it was
Okay,
pretty overwhelming.
yeah, no, thank you.
I think part of this is premiums have grown, higher deductibles make sense. I think, obviously you look at the premium back in 2013 or 14 versus where the premium is today, potentially on the liability lines. Now the deductible really makes, more sense because you have more deductible and more premium to offset that. So the city of McMinnville's been on a similar plan for quite some time, and that's, I think, helped the city offset some insurance costs, with frequency and severity as well.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Good information. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for feeding me. Oh, that's a good choice tonight. All right.
Thanks, actually take home.
No, I'm good. I got my fill of carbs tonight. So, thank you.
Thank you.
I do have just a question for Mark on that. So the $50,000, then where would that, I mean, would we be setting something aside for contingency or like, a potential deductible, like where would
Come out
that
of
change? It would come
Right.
out of reserves, and would we change our reserves to account for that, or just we have enough in reserves to absorb that if?
So
if
it
it
would
comes
be,
out.
it would come out of our operating budget, and we would, I mean, we have in our budget for just the premium.
Mhm,
So, yeah, it would be an unbudgeted cost if we
Mhm.
had a large claim.
mhm,
And so like John said, it would come out of reserves as a result of that.
mhm.
So if we did experience more of those, we would potentially incorporate that. It's kind of a part of
Yeah.
our budget process, but
Based on our track record.
yeah,
that
based
we
on our
have.
track record, we
Okay.
didn't feel like we needed to do that at this point.
And if this number were larger, we'd want to use that in our reserve requirement calculation, right? Okay, but it's
Yeah,
probably
if it was in our budget, it would become part of that, and if we were seeing that.
But
in
even
our
if it's not
reserves.
in the budget, it would be a risk that would be reflected in the reserve calculation, right?
Right, in the policy, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so we did a presentation. In the past, I've just kind of walked through the budget document, but this time, to be consistent with how we've been doing it over the last few months, I did a little presentation. So you've seen this timeline, Groundhog's Day, as we move through it. So we're in May, we're have the draft budget to present. Like I mentioned, everything is in it, still in draft format. And Just some highlights of things that are kind of the big picture items that are in the budget that I'll talk about in my presentation. For the light division, rate track, the rate increase that's in year 2 of our rate track, which is scheduled for October 1st. If the commission were to approve that, that would get us near break even. So that would deal with this year. Also, the reserve distribution clause credits that BPA we've been receiving from BPA, those will be ending this September. And they have signaled future rate increases in BP 26. And so we anticipate we will have some rate increases coming from BPA. We do have cash decreasing in the light division due to operating losses and capital spend. And then looking at water, we have operating losses in water, and I'll talk about the effect of that. We've been talking about cost of service for water. We're doing that now, going through that with our rate consultant now. And the effect of contributed capital depreciation on that. Also, we have a $7 million cash increase in the water division, which is largely due to our non-operating income, which we'll go over tonight's interest. We have Zone 2 contributions and of course timber revenues. So, and then we actually did look at, I mean, we've known that we have inflationary pressures that we're seeing in both divisions, but we actually took a look at the CPI and compared that to our rate increase history for both the light and the water divisions. And you can see the totals, and it's interesting, the last 3 years makes up about half of the 10 years of total increases. So the pressures have happened pretty recently, and so that's why we're kind of feeling that in both divisions. So this is in the budget document. This view is different than what we looked at in April because this has all expenses and all revenues, not just operating expenses and revenues. There's no rate increases included in this for the light division for both revenues or the expenses. No BPA rate increases, and no increases for anything that for the rate track increase. So this is just as the budget is, no increases in it.
So Mark, on the industrial sales, where there is a pass-through of the expenses, the power costs, right? But you didn't increase either the revenue from that or the expense from that? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And we will not see a BPA rate increase until September of next year, correct?
Correct.
That would be the start of October 1 of 25-26. So we won't have a BPA rate increase until the following budget year.
Good. Thank you.
So the result of this is total revenues, total expenses. Revenues are less than expenses in the light division, and therefore we're drawing on reserves about $2.4 million for fiscal year 24-25. So this is a kind of a projected summary, but we did do a little twist on it, and what we did is, so across the top, you see the rate increases here, the ones that are included in the budget. We don't have any rate increase here because this is as budgeted in the budget document, but what would that rate increase if that was enacted? What would that look like? So we showed that just again, just for information. And then, like John just mentioned, we would not have any increase until 25-26, and that would be BP 26 rate case for BPA, and we will know more about that next year, and that's why we have our cost of service scheduled for next year to incorporate what we know at that time about rates and how that would affect our, our financial health of the light division. So
So Mark, that number 47,109 is basically all power other than Cascade and Aeroquake.
right.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's that 2.75% increasing revenues other than the industrials. Yeah. So, and then the numbers that I've circled, I've got additional slides on those. So I'll talk a little bit about the operating loss and then also about the cash, change in cash.
And-
Oh, sorry.
I'm
Go back.
sorry, Mark. I was just gonna say, so the BP 26 rates, there's nothing. There's not much of anything calculated in there. Like you haven't made a guess or
No.
projection, so
No.
that's just a tiny bit of growth.
Yeah,
A couple percent or something.
this slide here.
Excuse me, Mark,
Oh, yeah.
before you go on,
Mhm.
can I see the last slide again, please?
Yeah.
So your operating income or your operating revenues, that money does not include what Cascade pays us on the monthly fee, is that correct? Or does it?
It does.
It does, okay, but it doesn't include their power costs in it, is that right?
Well, it includes all the revenue that we charge them, all the costs that we charge them. It includes that, but not the at a flat rate, not an increased rate. If
But
that's
it's
what you're
a
asking.
flat, it's a same revenue, same expense.
Right,
Yes.
exactly, but it is included in those numbers.
Yes.
Okay, I
But
misunderstood.
it's
That's
transmission
correct.
and it's.
It's everything. It's both transmission and power.
Other and power,
Well, that's what Cascade's paying, pass directly through. They're
but
paying,
it's our money and that's not the BPA bill reflected in there, correct? Or is it? Because you just said it was void of Cascade.
So no, the Cascade Steel, Air Gas, their revenues and the costs are included in the operating budget.
In that 47 number or a different?
47 million.
In the
yes.
47, yes. The difference is that the 2.75% is not
On
doesn't
Cascade.
apply to the industrials.
Great, okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
All right, okay, that makes sense.
Okay. So this next slide is the effect of BPA's reserve distribution credits, the distribution clause credits. And so what I'm showing here is because the credits come as a reduction to expenses. So we start off with supply costs before any of those reductions. And then you can see what we've received for reductions from BPA for both distribution customers and industrial customers. And then you can see how the costs for industrial customers, that reduction actually becomes a reduction in our revenues because they're passed through to the industrials, and therefore we don't get those revenues. But in the case of the distribution customers, those revenues, or I'm sorry, those cost reductions actually flow through to our cash reserves. And so you can see the totals of both over these fiscal years shown here, 4.3 million for distribution that's gone to our cash reserves and 4 million that's gone back to the industrial customers. Let me go back on this one thing here I didn't note. So these numbers here, these are part of the reason why we have very significant increases in our expenses, and also we have increases in our revenues. And you see that in the 24-25 budget. So it's kind of like we're coming back, the revenue or the expenses and revenues jumped significantly in the light division in 24-25 because of the end of the RDC. So this is kind of the explanation behind that. So this here shows our cash reserve change You can see that highlighted there, circled at the bottom of the 24-25
And
column.
that's after the BPA credits.
Yeah, that is, yep. And that, all of the, cash decreases across all fiscal years, you can see totals out to the $13 million loss, 13.5. So, and then you can see also what we're doing with some, I mean, I just showed some examples of the capital items. You can see capital shown up here. This is our outflow for capital. And here's all the, not all, but some of the significant capital items in the light division. Certainly the marshaling facility improvements that we've been talking about this evening, that's a big chunk. But there's others too. And so, and this is just some of them. This is an exhaustive list, some of the bigger ones. So I guess questions about the light division before I jump into water.
So Mark, remind me, please. What's the change in cash if we do the rate track rate increase, the 2.75%?
So it does change. I don't have all the years and I didn't total them, but you
No,
can
just for the budget year 24-25.
24-25, we would bring back about 800,000, not quite 800,000 to our cash reserves.
Okay.
750 years.
6 versus 2.
Yeah,
Mhm.
right down here. You
Okay,
can see
right.
the difference.
Thank you.
Yep. So water division is interesting. And we'll talk about this later, but again, so no rate increases included here either. Obviously, we don't have rate increases on the expense side because we're not purchasing our water, but no rate increases in the revenues. But you look at the revenues, before we basically were talking about in last month, we were talking just about our operating revenues. And so all the rest of this, all is additional revenues that we get in the water division. So you can see their interest in timber, very significant. And then this year we have the Zone 2 contributions, a couple million there.
So
And
is that's reflective of House Bill 4134?
we put it in there if that were to happen. So we have that actually is reflected in the cash side here, or the revenue side here, and it's also in the capital.
Does that make sense for it to be in here?
Well, it would be if that were to happen, we would get
Well,
those.
I mean, that is happening. I mean, the governor's signed the bill, so that's happening. Contract is,
So then it would be a contribution from the developer when we start building. That's why it's in there.
okay.
So we record as the project goes underway, the project is part of our capital costs. Work in progress, basically, while we're building it. And then we recognize the value of that, either since we're getting cash, we would get cash, and that would be recorded as other revenue contribution in aid to construction.
I have a quick question about the 2 million in particular. Will that project be realized in this fiscal year that we're looking at? Or will it be the next fiscal year?
Typically, when we do those extension agreements, we ask for the money up front.
Okay. Thank you.
because we want to make sure that they're gonna follow through. So if the developer builds it, commits to it, we want the money up front.
So again, you look at the total revenues and total expenses. Revenues are higher in the water division, all in with revenues compared to costs. And so we have a cash increase in the water division of 1.3 million. So then this is the kind of budget projection summary across the years of the budget. And again, we're showing our rate increases that have been enacted. We're in cost of service now that would develop a rate track for these 2 years. And then our plan is to continue to do cost of service on a recurring basis to continue to address the health of the water
So
division.
Mark, go back up to operating revenues and operating expenses. If we take the 7.5 versus the 8.1, we need to reflect from that we are not selling water at break even. We're losing money.
600.
Cost is more to produce it than we're generating revenue. Okay.
Yep.
And my concern there naturally is that it's great to have the interest and everything, but the markets change. If there's a restriction on selling timber, things like that, it's just, that's why it's so important to these primary keep.
Plus, we don't want to encourage people, financially encourage people to waste water.
Right.
So it's a conservation thing.
I'm sorry, if I can go back just a little bit. I don't need you to physically, well, okay. I think, just given the fact that, I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind renaming that category, and that's only because that money that's coming in is also provisional. And I think it's important to call out exactly where that money's coming from in our budget document, so that there is consistency and transparency all the way through, and that when we're doing any reporting back to the state from the city level, that it's kind of reflected in all the documents in a similar way. And it's very minor, but as opposed to a zone 2 contribution, I think calling that out as either the House bill number, well, I think the House bill number would be the right thing to put in there, because we can then use that without generating new reports into the future, right? It's supportive documentation. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, because then we look at future years, we'll know what that
So next time we see this, we'll see
anomaly
House bill.
was. Yeah.
House bill.
Yeah, it's just a word.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You might add the fiscal year to that, since the numbers are used over. They reuse numbers just for future reference.
in the budget document, I actually have, I think I called it just grant. I changed it here, just in some of our conversations. But yeah.
Well, that's really good, because we made a big deal on the policy side about it not being a grant.
Yeah.
So it's it's the
So I'll-
2024 House Bill 4134.
So it seems to me like including that as part of just the revenue pot when I'm looking at, setting rates, like it's an anomaly. It's not something I can expect to get next year or the following year. And I feel like it kind of really skews our forward projection to have this blip and set rates based on that. And then, when it's not there, what does the next year look like? So.
Well, what they'll do, so where you'll see, so you see it in the revenues, it's
Mhm.
included here, it's a part of this contributed capital, it's 2 million of that
Okay.
contributed capital.
Okay.
And then it's also, you can't really see it, you'll see it on a different slide, it's part of the capital. So,
It's not in operating revenue.
No.
Okay,
No.
I apologize. I
Yeah,
thought it-
no.
Okay.
And then, yeah, at the bottom, I highlighted there that 1.3 million, increase in cash.
Mark, just a ballpark, what percentage rate increase would it take to get rid of the $46,000?
Well, when we looked at this in April, and we did kind of just a illustrative revenue change, it was, if we had 700,000 at that time, it was about 9%. And so it's probably going to be, in the 8.5% range.
Okay, thank you.
That's just to be break even.
right?
There's more to come now.
Yeah, so this next slide shows what the commission, what we discussed recently in our we talked about some cost of service items. This item particularly, depreciation that's removed for contributed capital for rate making purposes. And so when our cost of service gets done, the depreciation on our contributed capital assets actually gets removed. And so rather than a $645,000 loss, our cost of service would be based on $175,000.
So this is a Mark Bocamp.
It's actually an industry,
And so does.
yeah, it's an industry standard
So
way
Mark
to
would
do
be
cost
quoting
of
Gatsby,
service.
And we're saying this is the industry.
Well, so our budget is done under generally accepted accounting standards, under GASB standards. So our budget would show this, but cost of service is done differently. It removes this, and therefore we have a much closer to break even loss. And the reason that's removed, I've noted down here, is that those assets, because they were given to us, they would be come on the radar of rate making and go into our rates when they end up in our master plan and ultimately in our capital plan. So that's when they would come on the radar for being included in our rates.
I thought Mark said they're included in your rates, another Mark, Beauchamp, that is included in your rates when you replace them, when you pay money out, and it's not included if it's contributed.
So it's not included when it's contributed, but like any other item that we plan to purchase, large item that's a part of our capital plan, we've got many things that are out several years in our capital plan. When it hits our capital plan, Mark factors that into our
Okay,
rates.
but that would be for the $2 million, that would be 20 or 30 years from now, right?
Yeah, it would be whatever the life of that asset would be. Yeah.
And which way have we always done it when looking at whether we have a loss or not?
So from a budget perspective, we've always looked at this number. It's interesting. So Mr. Beauchamp, he indicated that they've done it this way for a number of years. I became very aware of this actually just a few weeks back before our meeting that we had, the commission all met together. So I didn't know really this level of detail in April when we talked, or I would have brought this up then. So, and yeah, the reason this is done is because if you were to charge, build the depreciation into rates, then the issue is that there have been lawsuits filed that ratepayers say, "Hey, I'm being charged twice."
You talked about that.
But the person who is being charged twice isn't paying the whole amount, they're paying a minuscule percentage. So it'd have to be like a big data center or something, wouldn't it? For it to make any sense at all. We don't have anybody big enough who's gonna have any, because everybody else pays most of that cost. The rest of the ratepayers, other than a steel mill, we don't have any big water ratepayer, or I guess the dairy too, but so.
Yeah, I think it's the methodology that's used, and if there's I guess a problem with the methodology, that's where the risk of the lawsuit comes in, and that's why industry standard is, pulls it out, and why Mr. Beauchamp doesn't include it for his cost of service studies.
But I believe that when the conversation was happening with Mr. Beauchamp and Commissioner Tankersley, that back and forth that they were going on, I believe even though Mark didn't like Tom's idea of leaving it in there, he did ultimately say that if the commission, I made a note somewhere, I think he ultimately said if the commission decided that they wanted to keep it in there. That he said he wouldn't do it, what did he say? He said he wouldn't do it, like we wanted, but he would find another way
yeah.
to
Yeah,
put
that's
it
right.
back
That's right.
in.
A different percentage.
Yeah, a different mechanism. I'm sorry, I made a note here today. but-
Talked about a rate of return.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he said he would use a rate of return adjustment
Mhm.
instead. So it sounded to me, it seemed to me from our discussions that he was still gonna come back with something that would look more like the 645 number, not the 175 number, even though he says from his, I mean, Mark said if he was presenting it to a different entity, he would show the 175, but because we've always done something a certain, this way, and Tom went back and forth with him, he said, okay, I'll leave it in, but I'm just not gonna do it, the way I would normally do it. I thought that's what I heard.
That's what I heard him say.
Yeah.
I'm not sure he's agreed to that, but.
No,
we
he
can
said
go
that's
back.
what he would have to do. He
Right.
said, yes.
Okay, so maybe he's waiting for more direction from us on that, so.
So help me when we set our rates, the depreciation plus the inflation of the cost of the item we're replacing eventually, we're having today's rate players pay for what they use up, right? Isn't that the theory behind it? That because it's not just what we paid for it, it's also this increase. Didn't he say that was one of the factors, and even applies it to this contributing capital?
So the depreciation is a non-cash expense that will, it actually reduces our cash draw for capital as a result of that. So the depreciation does apply to capital, if that's kind of what you're.
I'm just trying to think. I'll say it another way. As I understand how we set rates, the reason that the depreciation is added in as an operating expense, added back to operating expenses, because in GASB it comes out. But when we set our rate, we add it back to operating expense because we're having today's customers pay for the ultimate replacement of the items they're using today, right?
I can maybe show, and I'm not sure if let me explain it this way and see if this helps.
Okay.
So depreciation, this number here, here's our capital, from the capital plan, here's our depreciation. This depreciation actually reduces the cash required, the cash outlay required for our capital. So this depreciation, which is the reason it's an operating expense, is we recognize the value of the assets on the balance sheet, and then over time those assets become less valuable because they wear, and so that reduction in value gets expensed through our operating statement as an operating cost because we're using it up. We're in our operations as part of our operations. And so that depreciation, it's a non-cash operating expense. So we didn't actually pay out money physically in that expense. It's non-cash. It gets reflected in our cash flow statement as a in this way that it reduces what we actually will have to pay out for cash for in this case for capital. It applies to capital. It's actually part of your net income adjustment, but it's related to capital, and so it reduces your capital expenditure. So it does apply. I mean, we are kind of getting that back. So maybe that's to your point, that it's reducing what we have to pay for capital. It's being applied in that way.
Yeah, or my point is a much higher kind of altitude look down. Just say is the depreciation an attempt to get paid back for something, or to pay for something when it needs to be replaced?
Um, I would say for cost of service, it may be different than it is for just accounting standards. I think accounting standards, it's just recognizing value and the reduction of that.
Right,
But for
yeah.
cost of service, yeah, the depreciation is helping to recover, cover the costs of capital. And you can see that here. And then, and I think that's why it gets the contributed capital gets pulled out, because it's not actually part of the, we haven't actually paid cash out for it. So
Cost. Thank you, but because that it doesn't show up as an expense either, right?
the
Contributed capital.
contributed capital would be, it would show up as a capital item because it's contributed for capital. So we put that in, right, not as an operating
Yeah,
expense.
so that's why you don't add back. Yeah, okay. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So, yeah, this slide is, I think this was the next one, back one. Yeah, we talked about that one. So this slide, gives our, just a view of our cash reserves, shows the $1.3 million increase, in 24-25, as well as the total cross projection of just under 7 million there. And shows some of our large project items for the water division. Some very significant capital items, not just related to this building, but transmission and other work there. So.
So I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
noticed the timber income of non-timber timber income
Yeah,
is going down over time.
yeah. So what this is these estimates are based on the sales that we have in place right now, and how they'll flow into next year. And then also assuming that we're going to have 2 sales in 24-25. And if we do a 1-year sale, we typically get half of that in the year of the sale, which, and that comes before June 30th of that year. So this represents basically 2.5 sales. And then that's just increased incrementally across the projection. So we had good sales in these years. We had, the same number of sales, but the yields were high. So we had higher revenues.
And Mark, you're predicting interest rates to go way down.
The interest rates, actually, I've got them as flat across the projection. So I'm not really showing a change in interest rates. Now, as the cash goes down in the light division, you see the interest income coming down.
What's the non-timber income other than interest?
So it's a number of things, contributed capital. I think all the stuff, there's the $2 million,
House Bill 4134.
yeah, House Bill 4134, yeah. That's in there. So yeah. And you get into out years, it's mostly interest. And then there's also some reductions, and I'd have to look at the detail of that to remember all the things, but yeah, so. So this slide I thought was kind of interesting to look, so in the April meeting, we looked at kind of a side-by-side comparison of our light and water expenses, but we didn't really talk about revenues side by side in this way. So I showed them this way. And you can really see the difference between the 2 divisions. In the light division, you've got, most of your revenue comes from sales, from industrial and distribution sales. Just a small amount, 8% in total, comes from non-operating revenues, where in the water division, not quite half of your total revenue comes from non-operating. And so just interesting to look at that. Certainly in this year, it's a little different because we've got, this additional 2 million in income from the House Bill 4134 revenue. So and then just some key takeaways. The light and the water divisions are both affected by inflation. We've known that, but then to put it out there that way, looking at the 10-year history really kind of highlighted that. The light division shows declining cash over the projection, 13 million. Water has increasing cash, 7 million. Both divisions show operating losses. Cost of service removes the contributed capital depreciation. We did make some budget cuts, but we did not and are not recommending structural cuts. Cost of service is critical for evaluation of both divisions. We're doing water this year and we'll do light next year. And I haven't really said anything about the fiber division. It's consistent with prior year. No change in the IGA is needed. So for that. So that's what I have.
Interesting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What's our total cash from the organization? It was number 7 to against 20. We got 50 million or that's more than that.
Actually, it's
Almost
in
70 million, isn't it?
So
It's 26 and 43.
it's about 25% of the cash was.
our ending cash balance is 69 million.
So 20, which was 25, so it's almost 25%.
I wanted to just ask a quick question about some budget cuts that are in here, like one of them was an internship for an engineer, right? And I mean, it's in the scope of everything, it's not a lot of money. I was just wondering, is that there because it was not something that was gonna get filled or? That's okay.
We didn't find somebody that was.
Okay,
Yes.
yeah, I just had.
Yep.
That's-
Good point. On our capital equipment stuff, is there, if we were hard pressed and didn't have any money, could we push all that off for a year or two? And survive?
We could get something.
Well, I understand.
That's the problem. We have.
I gotta ask.
It might get pushed off anyway.
So, we have hopefully a bucket truck. We can push things out, but there's things on the budget that are ordered already, the commission's approved, that are out budget years. 4 years still. So.
But are there other things that we could push out that aren't ordered?
I don't think we have.
Buildings.
They help us with our cash.
Yeah.
New buildings.
Yes.
I know.
Okay. There's always a way.
There's always a way.
Any additional questions?
No, I appreciate the thoroughness of. I did look at our performance and stuff, so that's.
I thought this was
And I
temporary.
do like the
asked
system.
to
I
push
think
it off, but
Andy
it's just gonna
started,
get more
we
expensive.
take this in chunks, so it's easier to digest. I think that's very helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been helpful, I think, for us, for me, for
So
sure.
next time we see this, it'll be the mayor's issue with the grant, we'll have it listed in the House bill.
Yeah.
No, it's not a grant.
The word grant.
Yeah, it's
The direct allocation.
Yes.
Any additional questions or comments? No? All right, well, thank you very much for your time today and for the presentation
Nice
and
job.
any general manager comments?
The only one I would add, I don't know if everyone knows, we had a pretty significant water main break yesterday on Second Street. So 10-inch cast. So that actually crews did a great job getting. I think they had it.
It's so fast.
Yeah, I think they were,
2
everybody was back on by like 8:10.
It's crazy.
Started, you know what time it started, James? Yeah, so about 4 hours and we had it right. Customers back on, so.
So, James and John, in your history, I as a huge proponent forever of ductile iron and
Yeah.
We don't see this with plastic, do we?
Can we get rid of the screen?
Do we see it plastic? Do we see it shattered at
Yeah, yeah.
And the life expectancy of plastics a lot less as well.
Interesting.
So we don't have much plastic in there. I mean, PVC, I mean, we have the HDPE, but that's a different material. So
I mentioned
much more
that,
flexible.
yeah, well, but the crack could have been dropped in shipment. I mean, it's crazy how some of the stuff, and it takes 25 years for it to show up.
I would think there's some kind of water handling type to it, or.
You know, pop or something, okay. Was interesting. I bet you're surprised I sent you the picture. right?
I already had
When my employees drove by and, I should say, not my employees, the county employees drove by and sent me.
But it was, you had to, how much,
Once you hit it, was that what it was?
Any additional comments or?
162 inches we had to replace? How long was that crack?
It ended 103 or 104 inches.
Long, very big, long crack.
Almost as bad as, making.
We have executive session.
We do. Any commissioner comments?
Oh, great meeting, thank you.
I want to make sure that everybody knows you should have received invitations. Many people will be there, but the community fair and the State of the City address is on May 30th at Civic Plaza. So I hope you all can be there. If you haven't received your invitations, I have some in my bag. And has everybody had an opportunity to review the financials? Great. Then we will first go into executive session before adjourning the meeting, but the open portion of the meeting is over and we are going to take a 5-minute break before we go into